Hi, I'm Ricky Fort and welcome to the Real Estate 101 podcast. Join me as I lift the lid on the real estate industry and share some great stories from behind the scenes. Like and subscribe and enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of Real Estate 101 by myself, Ricky Fort, the team at Geelong Real Estate Co. Welcomes a very special guest here today. We go way back. Guy LePage from BWRM. Welcome.
Thanks, Ricky.
Mate, I hear you know, or I know you're no amateur to podcasting. I was just listening to your one this morning. I think it's called, or maybe it's not you personally, but BWRM Overexposed, I think it was called.
Yeah.
So whose brainchild was that?
Look, I'd love to claim it, but it's not mine. Part of our team. Yeah, it's a really niche business that we're in, and it's really hard to communicate in small grabs what we do. So, so we decided long form for people who were genuinely interested might be a better way to really get them to understand what we do and how we do it.
I think for anyone listening, if you're interested, jump on Spotify or whatever, go straight to episode 4. That's where they bring the big guns in and they talk to you, mate. I sent you a list of questions before we catch up, but essentially, just so you know, the show is really, it's just to, show people behind the curtain of what real estate's like and talk to people obviously connected to the industry and on the ground floor. You and I obviously go way back. You were giving me a bit before the show started that you did my first profile video when I was a glorified assistant to Dylan Taggart for Buxton.
I think I called you a glorified PA.
Yeah, sorry, yep. But yeah, obviously that was a long time ago now, almost 10 years. So how long have you been in real estate photography?
I've been shooting in real estate for I think 15 years now. Yeah. But yeah, and I worked for a different organisation initially and then started my own in 2016. Don't
go too far into that because after listening to that episode, I've got a lot more questions. But, mate, I guess I usually start with people who go a bit further back than that. So you grew up in Geelong?
No, I grew up in Portland actually.
Right.
Born in Melbourne, and then my parents were like the original sea changers. 1,000 years ago. So I think it was probably 86 they moved from Melbourne to Portland. Dad was a builder. And he built our house, and then while he was building the house, saw a cray boat on the beach and bought that.
I've heard he's had an interesting background. Like, he was a helicopter pilot.
So
he's done everything.
Yeah, he was a crayfisherman my whole life, and that.
Did you eat a lot of crayfish?
No, you never eat crayfish.
Really?
It's too expensive.
Oh,
you sell it and buy lamb. But he
sounds
taught
like
me,
a character though. Sounds like a
he's a maniac. He taught me about hard work, really. More than anything, and but he also taught me about doing what you love. So, builder, crayfisherman, did that for 20 years, 7 days a week, 9 months of the year, as you do, and then bought a chopper, got his license, became a commercial.
In that order, bought the chopper first.
Oh, I think he wanted to buy a chopper, but the only way he could justify it is if
to
he
his
had
wife.
Exactly. Yeah, so
ultimate trying to get that past your wife. Yeah, and obviously, like you said, following your dad's footsteps, doing your own dreams. You are a qualified electrician.
Yes.
So you did how many years of that?
Oh, it's a 4-year apprenticeship.
Yep.
And then I was a couple of years working after my apprenticeship.
What's the best apprentice joke you've had?
Oh, nah. Got nothing.
You never, because you are an intelligent guy. So
like the long wait, usual stuff, striped paint. But no, you're not going to fall for that.
Well, yeah. I've heard some good ones.
Yeah.
But maybe it's just TikTok nowadays. All right, so grew up in Portland, obviously, and then what?
So I grew up there and then finished my time, was working as a trade, and I met my now wife. She's a physio. She moved down and she was saving to travel. I was saving to travel, and then when we met, it was a bit of a whirlwind, and I think we were married within less than 2 years.
Wow.
And then we travelled for 2 years.
Wow.
So just backpacked.
Yep.
And I pulled the camera out that I hadn't had out since high school, and, I think I shot something like 35,000 frames in 2 years, and I just couldn't bear the thought of putting it away when I got back.
Yep.
So I was just sort of figuring out what to do.
Yeah. And you realised it was a passion for you, and maybe being an electrician wasn't. There's only so many pendants you can hang in a mate's house. Or whatever.
No, it's really interesting. I mean, I didn't know.
Do you still get asked to do the odd Sparky job, or is that well and truly behind now?
Oh yeah, look, I'm still licensed, but you wouldn't get me to do a job unless you wanted your house to burn down.
What about the missus? Does she get you to like slip a PowerPoint here? Or
oh yeah, I do stuff at home.
Yeah.
I do stuff at home, but yeah, no, I don't. I definitely don't.
There's never days that you miss the trade, because obviously, like having a business and that's got all its own horrible nightmares. So sometimes, you think, geez, maybe going back to something a bit simpler is not such a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it's more simple. That's that's just different kettle of fish, isn't it?
True, different problems.
Yeah, and look at grass is always greener, isn't it?
Yep.
So
yes,
it was tough. It was fun. I learned a lot. Really enjoyed it. I developed skills which were transferable, believe it or not. And
as in quoting.
No, nothing like that. Just problem solving. I was working for Alcoa down in Portland, so we were doing like robotics. So imagine like a robot that I don't know,
does robot things.
Mm-hmm. And you turn up, or a piece of equipment that does equipment things, and you turn up and that wouldn't be working. Yeah. And I'm 18, 19, going
problem solve.
Well, yeah, they're like, this doesn't work, and I'm like, cool. I don't know what it actually does when it does work, and so you'd have to sort of work backwards from there, and then half the time it'd be a blown up gearbox or something, nothing to do with electricity, Yeah. So you learn a lot about looking at complex things and really trying to break them down into simple parts.
Well, hearing your podcast, I realised quickly I thought you were just a bit of a joker behind the camera and just someone that had good banter and was a people person. But I realised pretty quickly that you've definitely got an entrepreneurial brain that goes into problem solving.
Yeah, and I think that's the transferable
We've got to keep your head in check here. We don't want you getting away. But no, it's definitely obvious that you can identify a problem and help people sort it out.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I didn't do it overnight. I reckon it was 5 years before I really even knew what I was doing.
Yep.
We 15 years ago, there were people doing what we were doing, but there weren't that many.
Yep.
Like there were still agencies in Geelong taking their own photos.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I heard you saying like on the show that, going down to lawn and there was a bit of a resistance initially because those guys kind of felt like you were cutting their lunch, or like, why would I pay you to do it when I can do it myself for free? And so a lot of time training. Yeah,
really training clients to train vendors.
Yep.
I remember using one photo that one client took of, he photographed the inside of a house, a lounge room, but he did it because he couldn't find the key. He did it from outside and it was a reflection of himself. On the internet. No joke.
Love it. Surely, actually, we need to pull up a big montage of like, there's some bad real estate photography out there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, and the one in the bathroom, how they put the arm out and take their photo with the camera? That's fun.
Yeah. Look, there he is. I mean, and I don't think ultimately that helps anyone.
No.
That doesn't help you.
I'd like to think that's on the way out.
Yeah, you would think so. You never know. You never know, mate. But look, I think that comes down to that education thing, doesn't it? If vendors don't understand the benefit of marketing correctly, then they're not gonna want to pay for it, and likewise for an agent.
Yeah, mate, talk to us. I guess the one reason why I wanted you to come on the show, because I think your story's very similar to mine, especially after hearing that episode around you were working for a franchise model.
Yes.
And then you left the franchise model.
Yeah, that's right.
And some things went well and some things didn't go super well. So talk to us about, we'll get straight into it, no foreplay. So tell us about how long were you at the franchise model?
I was there 8 years.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting thing. So I basically came back from travelling, knew I had no business experience. I had no systems and no real...
No customers as such, like a book.
Yeah, I didn't have anything. And I didn't buy a book.
Yep.
I basically bought into the idea that they would be training me.
Yep.
They'd show me what I didn't know and guide me, coach me and help me with all the things I didn't know.
Yep.
As it turned out, there was very little of that. I think I had 3 or 4 days on the road and that was it.
Yeah.
And then I soon realised that everything that they had taught me was not going to cut it.
Do you remember a feeling... So you did or didn't buy that first business?
I didn't buy the first one. They couldn't fill it. So it was a half business. So the Otway franchise.
Do you remember kind of a feeling whether maybe it was internal or you spoke to your wife or whatever, if she was your wife at that time, and you're like, they might have overpromised.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Do you remember that feeling?
Yeah. And I'd had those conversations.
With the franchise people?
Yeah, and what I'd done is I'd basically tried. By the time I left, I felt I'd tried everything.
Well, yeah, I don't want to go too. Let's talk about that because I remember get specific around because it resonates really well with me. You said something on your show about. Well, for me, sorry, I'm jumping around. For me, I hate that saying like it is what it is or that's the way it is. That's nothing makes me angrier than hearing that and people just being closed-minded and not wanting to try anything new. And when I heard your story, it was very similar to that. So there was some problems with the franchise model what was, just give me one of those issues.
Well, the specific issue is that there's the person on the ground who's generating the business, then also doing the work. Right, and at that time,
meeting the real estate agents, getting them to give you the work,
correct?
You going out doing the work,
And then in those days, we were producing our own work, so we would do all our own retouching. We'd draw up our own floor plans, and then eventually we were editing our own videos. All after hours. And then delivering it the next day. But you know the flaw was that the franchise model effectively took such a high percentage of your gross turnover that it meant that you couldn't make a profit.
What was it, just as a guesstimate, like 10%, 50%, 90%?
It was less than 40, but more than 30% of gross.
Okay.
Right, so that gives you an idea. So that means really, if you're paying, say, let's for example, 30% gross, you really need a 30% profit margin to break even. And many people will tell you that that's a pretty healthy profit margin for a normal business.
It's a great profit margin for any business.
Right. So what that meant, and this is where it undercut itself, is that if you wanted to send out your own your work to be produced to a higher standard, that came out of your pocket as well. Right. And that might be 20% of gross. Right. So now you're at 50% before you have to have a 50% net profit just to break even. Right? So you don't. So you produce it yourself. So it goes to a lower standard and it's rushed, et cetera, et cetera. So you basically either go into a death spiral of just having to do a crap job, then having to lower your price because your product's crap and you make even less money, or you try to improve it and you still make no money. And I've basically been through every possible scenario with them and I could not make that model
So
work.
you actually jumped on a flight to, I think the franchise model was in Melbourne or Sydney, and you jumped on a flight, went there yourself and organised a meeting with them at all your expense.
That was Auckland, yes.
Sorry, Auckland,
at my expense, yes.
So you went and said, hey guys, I've got a proposition, I want to put it to you, I want to be face to face, and you've gone there and give me just one examples of the things that you pitched to them that they knocked on the head.
Yeah, so what the general idea was, sliding scale commission. So sure, keep your commission for low performers. And when I'd started, they told me a threshold that I could expect. And that no one really exceeded. And I was going sort of nearly, 7 or 8 times that threshold at that point in terms of
volume.
In volume. So I was basically saying you need to slide the scale of the commission that you pay down as you go and hit a cap point. So beyond a certain point, you're not paying anymore, because I'll still get their $25,000 a month. Right. So which is fine, but they just were not interested. They just said no. That's never going to happen. And that's, I remember the flight home just feeling sick really, because I knew what was coming. I knew what I was going to have to do.
I want to let that moment sit, because I know like not everyone will be watching this. A lot of it will just be people listening. But yeah, that's a moment.
Yeah, it sucks.
It's a moment when you're like, you know what, I've put forward a really good case. I would like to think that I'm being fair and reasonable. I'm actually not asking for overs, but I've pled my case. And
I think the big thing for me was I demonstrated that you could achieve what they thought you couldn't. I demonstrated that I'd helped everybody in my own time around me to build businesses. I'd done everything I could possibly do within their framework to make a profitable business, and I just could not do it. I couldn't do it. And rather than come up with a problem, I came up with a solution.
Because I love that too, that everyone just comes up with a problem and complains, but you took the time and you said, hey, this could work.
Yeah, and the business was full of great people. That was the sad thing.
Their business?
Yeah, the whole franchise was full of great people. And I found that really sad, because it was,
Like you've already done the work. All you got to do is tweak this, which I bought to you. It's already done.
Yeah, all you got to do is tweak it. And all they saw, unfortunately, the really short-sighted view was well, I'm just going to make less money. And it's like, well, no, you're going to have a sustainable business into the future.
You're going to retain these great people you've got.
Yeah, and you're going to take 2 steps backwards and you're going to take 10 steps forward.
Yep.
Now, ultimately, I don't know the internal workings of their business, but I am pretty confident externally that business has significantly diminished since I left.
Yep.
For the reasons because it's just not a profitable thing for the people doing the work.
So how did that conversation go with resigning?
I really was at pains to do it through the front door. I want to be able to look myself in the eye in the mirror and know that I did the right thing. So ultimately I sat down and I said, look, I'm going to leave in 3 months.
Yep.
I've tried everything. I've got another baby on the way. I just have to do this. I can't do another year with no profit.
Yep.
And so they spent probably the first month trying to convince me not to leave. And as I said, look, the model's broken and it's not you. I was talking to the franchisor locally, not the head guy at this point. I'm like, you can say what you want, but ultimately the head guy is not going to change.
Yeah.
So therefore, there's nothing you can say that's going to convince me because I've been there, I've spoken to him, and he's told me to my face.
Yep.
Ultimately I just moved on. And
so how did that conversation go?
Well, it was tough, because I was described to me by a mate that I was the golden goose, like I was laying the golden eggs, and they did not want to let me go, right? So they tried everything, they tried to convince me to stay, then they tried to threaten me to not leave.
Talk to us about that.
No, I don't want to get too close.
I get it.
Yeah, realistically, they said we'll finish you, right? That was that wasn't necessarily.
That's got hard nipples.
Yeah, that's not necessarily the words, but that was the intent, right? We will destroy you, you know, and
like legally and
and then ultimately they tried to enforce a restraint.
Yep. Did you had contracts and stuff in place, didn't you? You said on your show one thing I loved, because it's everyone who knows me personally, and I'm the same as you. You struggle to talk about stuff because you don't want to open up more cans of worms. I get that, but I love your analogy, the carrot and the stick.
Yeah. Well, that's what our business tries to be all carrot. So but that business, and I don't want this to be all about them, because actually I don't think about them that much, to be honest.
Well, you probably shouldn't, because you're on doing some incredible things now, but it's still a good part of the story.
Yeah. So ultimately you start with carrot and then it ends up with stick, right? Yeah. So it's like carrot, join, and then the carrot just starts disappearing and you realise the carrot was an illusion, and then it's just a stick keeping you there. And that's the franchise agreement, right?
I remember when I went from one agency to another, the CEO of that company reached out to me and said, I'm going to be part of your training and I'm going to mentor you personally and I'm going to help you do this and I'm going to help you do that. And there was these amazing, incredible promises. And then I never heard from them again after that, not once, ever. Yeah. And I refer to that as the show bag business. It's like shiny on the outside, and that's the carrot. And then the stick is just, those threats of legal stuff. It's not great. I guess tell us a bit about then. It's all about BWRM now. So first of all, where'd you come up with the name? Because
it's not a great name. But what I wanted, I opened that BWRM's a nightmare, right? Nobody knows what it is, what it means, and ultimately, even I've got business partners now who want to change it, which I don't know what to change it to. So I'm like, we'll just be the KPMG of real estate photography, unless you come up with a better option.
Right, I'll let you know. Well, maybe we can put a poll in the show notes.
But no, ultimately I want it to be black and white. So B and W. But then there's Bowers and Wilkins, and there's black and white cabs, and there's 1,000 black and white businesses, all who told me.
Did any of them try and sue you?
No, they didn't try to sue me, but there's a trademark procedure, and they all blocked it.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I couldn't. Yeah. Right. So then
with a snazzy logo and wow, this will do.
Yeah, and look, in hindsight, I probably should have thought a bit longer, but I think
your branding looks good.
It looks good, but it doesn't nobody knows what it means. But ultimately, the idea was that it was meant to be cut and dry, simple, straightforward.
Well, it definitely is all that. I think it's good.
Yeah, and
I think when you're really close to a project, you can overthink it. And when it's your baby and you get a bit of negative feedback too, it's like, because my brother-in-law's idea was my website should be geelongrealestate.co, and like 400 billion people have sent me an email to .com, and then it bounces and they're like, it's like I said 4 times it's .co, but so when you're close to it, I get that.
You just had to buy .com, mate, and redirect
I did. It cost me a fortune. But anyway, so what was I saying? Yeah, so I guess you've resigned, you've gone out on your own. The reason why I think you've got massive cojones is because when you left, a lot of people followed you, which I think is pretty spicy.
Yeah, and look, I think that was ultimately what upset the franchise the most. But do you know what, I because I was the golden goose laying those golden eggs, they really wanted to make an example of me. And so they threw everything they could at trying to finish me, right? And I don't know. I dug in pretty hard, and I ultimately came out, able to do what I was going to do, and in a really positive way. And what that did is, what that ultimately led to was a whole lot of lies being said about me to try to stop other people. But what they didn't counter or understand was I just spent 8 years helping these people build businesses. So you make something up about somebody and you tell it to people, like it actually does the wrong, they did the wrong thing by themselves. So all these people have ultimately said, you know what they're saying? And I'm like, I don't really care what they're saying. They're like, well, we've lost faith too. Let's go. Yeah. So that happened.
So in your first year, I always like to think my story's all right, but yours eclipses mine. So in your first year of business, you were saying, went from literally just you to 12 people in your first year.
Yeah. I remembered it incorrectly in my own podcast.
You said 18, but that was including partners.
A couple of partners there.
Wouldn't it been an expensive Christmas party?
Yeah, it was a big one. But yeah. So it went sort of.
It would have been a pretty cool feeling, like looking around the room, going, "What? All these guys believe me. They back me in." And that's my favourite part of my business is. Yeah, these guys are invested in you, and they believe in you and your brand and your vision, and it's really humbling. Like
it is, and it's a lot of trust, and what it's trust both ways. But what I sort of said to those guys is, look, we don't know what we're going to be. We're not going to be a franchise.
Just hang on and
let's see where we go. And if it doesn't work for you, you will not have any, I'll still be your friend.
I want to talk about that as well, right? Because you've come from that carrot and the stick, and you're contractually obligated. We're going to sue the shit out of you if you leave or whatever. If any of the guys are welcome to talk about my contracts with my guys as well. I wrote it myself. My lawyer's like, this is a terrible idea. And I'm like, well, fuck that. So I wrote it myself, and it basically says you're free to go at any time. Take anything you've built with you over that time, all your friends, customers, past clients, whatever. You tell me you're leaving, I'll download it for you.
Yeah.
Because it's like your customers, your friends, your family are always going to be loyal to you. Just don't mess with us and our business, and do the right thing by us, and that's how it should be. And when I heard you talk about on your show that anyone that joins you, if this is our business model, this is what we can offer. If you like it, amazing. If you don't have to stay. Not said in a negative way. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And I've got relationships with people who've been and gone.
Yep.
Right. I don't have any bad blood with anybody who's decided ultimately it's not for them.
Yeah. Or they think they can do something better. Like you've had the luxury of that and wanting to do your own thing. So you've got to respect other people wanting to do it.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I think now, I'm really careful about now we know exactly who we are, what we do, and how we do it. Right. And it's really. We have our pillars. I can communicate pillars. It's really straightforward. Before it was just so big and vibey.
It was just a vibe.
yeah, and it was, and sort of this wasn't included and that wasn't included. And as we've evolved, it's sort of this is what it is. It's got a lot
tighter.
Yeah, we know what it is, right? So ultimately, we don't want people joining if they're not sort of bought in. Yep. So it actually takes a lot of time to sit and talk.
Get people up.
Yeah,
and that's tweaked over time. Yeah, I love that. So I guess talk to us about. It definitely doesn't sound like you were actively prospecting or whatever to get these other guys over. I know Nick Tonsing. So I think you were my first photographer when I worked for Buxton, and you did all their work. And then I worked with Nick Tonsing. I think back then he was with it was a yellow and red brand, but anyway, I can't remember who they were. But yeah, he was with them. And then he joined you not long after that, and then. There was what's Lindsay's last name?
Yeah, I can't remember. Got that.
So Lindsay, then there was, anyway, you've just gone bonkers, and basically you haven't had to recruit in, or it doesn't look like you've had to go out and get everyone. Everyone's just enjoyed what you're doing and has wanted to partner up. And then tell us about Lucas, because Lucas was coming in just as I was exiting my last business.
Yeah, Lucas has actually been on the scene longer than Nick. So Lucas is the very first person other than me in the business.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I had the order backwards, but yeah.
Yeah, and he came from a graphic design background.
Yeah.
So we spoke in early 2016, just after I'd started.
Yeah.
And I think he probably knocked on the doors of where you were working at the time and was sort of told to speak to me.
Yep.
And yeah, so he's amazing. He's a perfectionist. You know, you've worked with him.
He's great, yeah.
But he's just a really great example of somebody who's just totally embraced what we do.
Yep.
And he's built himself a great business. He's all his objectives when he started, he's met and exceeded.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's great.
So he's got his brother working with him. They're a cool duo.
Yeah, and he's got his sister. She works remotely.
Oh, does she?
Yeah, well, she did. I don't know
nice.
for sure the inner workings. But yeah, and, you know.
So you're pretty hands-off. Like, you just like, this is what I can offer you. If you want to use it, don't abuse it.
Yeah,
and you're letting people build their own version of BWRM. Like,
well, you can build your own business. We license a platform. That platform has pillars. They're the 5 tools that you use.
Yep.
If you want to use those, or if you want to license a platform, you use those tools.
Yep.
Right. In terms of the business development and that sort of stuff, you know, people can. There's nuance. People can do things how they suit, so long as they do those main pillars. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. You guys are absolutely killing it. I remember when just before I left the previous place I was working, there was a girl in Geelong. So Julia Warren from. I think she's with Barry Plant in Highton now. She was the first, or female, or just agent really, that was doing like a lot of video.
Yeah.
And she just presents really well. She's got a beautiful voice and, always dressed to the nines and stuff. And she started getting into video, and she was Dylan Taggart's personal assistant at Buxton before I was. So I kind of like learnt a lot from her, and she was doing a lot of video with you, I think. And then that's how I started getting into it. And I think at the time when I left my last agency, Nick did me up a video. I think I produced more videos than any other real estate agent, maybe through your whole BWRM network or whatever. So we were doing a lot of video on that together, and it was just really hard to like stay creative, and because it's so hard to be like, I'm Ricky Phillip from, and this is 123 Smith Street. It was very hard to keep that energy up, and make it different.
Yeah, and look, that's interesting you should say that, because that's part of the hidden thing that I do is, we have our own video editing house. Now that's offshore, that's in Mauritius. So I started that in 2018.
Where is Mauritius?
2017. It's about 7 hours flight from Perth towards Africa.
Gotcha.
So it's a little island.
That's my next guess.
Yeah. So this side of Madagascar.
Got ya. Yeah.
Just south of Reunion.
Yep. So you've got your own gang over there.
Yeah, and they are. It's the same culture as we've built here. It's the same creative. We basically make space for them to be creative and express themselves, and that ultimately, you look after those guys. You make sure that the conditions are really great.
Yeah.
We run it like an Australian company. It's a great place to work, and then ultimately you get these amazing creative edits.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they're houses, right?
Yeah.
And it's really kind of hard to
reinvent the wheel over and over and over. Yeah.
And we just hit 10,000 edits this year.
Yeah.
Through that, since I set that video editing place up in 2017.
That's incredible.
So 10,000 real estate videos.
Yeah.
And I still look at them and go, gee, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Done a great job.
How did you go about, I guess, building relationships with so many different real estate agents and not being seen as favoriting people? I would imagine that's a big challenge.
Yeah, it is. It's a massive challenge. I mean, you get that. You'll get that from time to time leveled at you that, this person's getting more attention than this person, and it just isn't the case, right? So
I've never felt like that. I think that's one thing you guys do really well.
Yeah, you look, what you'd have to do as a business owner in our industry is, or a creative is just do the absolute best you can do. And
there's a lot of egos though, like sure, and I feel like you guys are good at massaging my ego. I feel like I'm the best presenter and I do the most videos, and I think that's one thing that it's a skill because I guess your customer pool is, even though you're doing 10,000 properties or whatever, your customer pool is only the real estate agents, and
yes,
it's not an unlimited pool. Well, it is, but it isn't. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you're totally right. So yes, there's the real estate agent, but then there's your client, the vendor, right? That we treat as our customer as well, because ultimately, if we're really nice to you and not nice to them, what's going to happen, right? They're going to complain to you, and you're not going to use us.
It's certainly never happened, but
yeah, of course. And so I think soft skills are really important in what we do.
Yeah.
Right. And the ability just to have emotional intelligence, to have a really good
read the room,
bedside manner, and and know when to shut up, know when to talk, demonstrate that you're in control, you know what you're doing, but also ask questions of the vendor or the agent, and those sort of things
make such a difference. I remember I heard on your show just when you in your prime of being behind the camera and just how tight you used to run a day if you were doing and that without editing, I just mean your shooting time between 9 to 5 or whatever, you had it down to like 5 minute between trips. You like Google mapping how close stuff is. You even had 2 minutes to talk to the vendor and 3 minutes to set the property up. Like that is a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, and ultimately that's not ideal.
Oh, certainly not, and it definitely doesn't feel like that anymore. It's very, but it's impressive with everything you've done and how quickly you've grown the business, man. And so how many crew?
I think we've got 34 businesses now, 2 in New Zealand. So we're just sort of starting that journey over there. And we're just really just aiming to, I'm sort of trying to add, if we can, 1 new business.
Is that a little bit about what the podcast, like that was the vibe I got, that it's really like around people learning how to run a business or what BWRM can offer as opposed to, because I'd say like all the challenges that you faced is probably what everyone faces.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's probably why they think your model's not bad.
Yeah, ultimately, and yes, the podcast is just it's just long form.
Yeah,
it's just so you can get across more detail, which you just can't do other than having a conversation, which is the entire point of a podcast, which is a conversation, right?
Yeah. What's the biggest thing that you're proud of that you think BWRM's like? Surely it's exceeded what I know. You're an ambitious dude, but fuck, 35 franchises and being international.
Yeah,
New Zealand.
Yeah, it's international.
It's pretty close.
Yeah,
but surely that surpassed what you thought was possible.
No, not even close.
Really?
Yeah. It's been slower. It's been harder. It's smaller than I want. But I tell you, we've solved. All we do is basically hit a problem and solve it, right? Without and just stay true to what we, to the values, the core values.
Yep.
So the thing I'm proudest of actually is when I look at the room at the conference and all the people, and I know everyone's story. I know that they're either moving towards their goals or they've exceeded their goals, say in Lucas's case. I know what they're able to do using the tools that we provide.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not responsible for their amazing abilities and the fact that they're great people, obviously. But I'm just proud that that quality, that standard of person wants to be involved.
How do you handle when, because I'm getting that a bit now, and I'm very much at the early stages. How do you handle, I guess, people coming forward that aren't the right fit?
It's tough. I've got scripts.
And you never want to burn bridges. Like you are very much a people person. As I said before, if you can manage all these egos and real estate agents and photographers are special cats as well. I guess, how do you, because people's skill set can improve, people's attitudes can change, everyone deserves a second chance, and I know you're not a guy to burn bridges, so like how do you manage that?
Yeah, so look, the overriding thing is that we have a no dickheads policy, right? I'm honest about it, right? You have one dickhead in your business and you're cooked, right?
Yeah, I remember actually Ben and Dylan used to say at Buxton that they didn't want that bull in a china shop stuff. No. Remember, because one bad egg obviously can ruin it for everyone. So
one person in the background who's negative, who's not talking about it to you, he's talking to 10 other people about
that.
an issue. You know, so what I'm ultimately looking for is when I'm talking to people, and we've built a process. So we have an ad, click an ad, you get information. At the end of that, you book a call that comes to me or two of the other directors.
Yep.
Right. We are assessing.
Like when you say directors from a national level?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So yeah, we'll then talk with every single person, every single candidate who gets that far, which is a barrier in itself to make a call and talk to somebody, or to book a call to talk to somebody. So we've put those barriers in place. So you have to actually want it, and then you just have to not be a dickhead, right? If you've got to be creative, right, and you've got to have a good attitude. You got those two things.
Let's talk.
I think we can help make you successful if you put the work in.
Yeah.
If you come to me and it's like a half aggressive sort of inquisition, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
It's not what we do.
That's good.
Right. So I've got all sorts of, you know, candidate statuses that you can tag people as, and you know, contractor potential, you know, unsuitable dickhead, you know, and ultimately, you know, if you're not ready to run a business, or you want to do a side hustle, it's probably not going to work. Yeah. So we pass you to somebody who's already got one.
Mate, we're massively running out of time. Do you remember? You're not really behind the lens at all much.
No, I'm a backup. Yeah.
Which is, I heard another thing, like, the idea of, it's a great position to be in basically in your business when it's so big that it doesn't need you. It needs a different version of you.
Yeah.
And to be honest, man, you're one of the most creative, and I think that's where like Nick and I used to struggle, because Nick's a banker, like, and I was in banking as well. But I think like you're either a creative soul like yourself, and you love photography and you love the business, and it's really important for you. What ratio do you think of your franchises? Franchises?
They're not franchises.
Franchise?
Licensees.
What ratio of a licensee is a business owner versus a creative? 50-50?
Look, you don't have to know how to do a business to join us. So you can join us as 100% creative
They're my favourite people to work with.
Yeah. And all you've got to do is want to run your own business, which is why we're talking in the first place, right? They've made the effort because that's what they want. They're looking for a commercial outcome for their creative business.
But it can start with a really, what's the word? Unoffensive, just, you know what, I'm sick of giving, which is why you, by the sounds, to dumb it right down, why you did your own thing is because I'm just sick of giving so much away. Yeah. Such an unfair portion of what I'm doing to somebody else.
Yeah, well, look at Lucas, right? So Lucas is extremely skilled, right? Had never run a business, creative, was working for agencies, and getting paid a pretty good hourly rate, but that was it. You know, what's next? Like, where do you go? He's ultimately had to start his own thing, or be happy with where he was at, and he wasn't happy with where he was at. He wanted more. So he brought those skills of that creativity, his attention to detail, and all those great people soft skills, and then plugged them into the model, and then, you know, we've worked with him to build a business.
Who's the most, we're seriously got to run, but who's the most creative person you've got, or top three or two or one, or just give me someone that we need to jump on Instagram and check out their work? Like, who's just someone that you're just insanely proud of their creative juice?
I reckon Jackie, Northern Beaches, Sydney.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll get on and check her out.
Just, you know, I love them all.
Yeah, of course, they're all your babies.
You put me on the spot.
I get that. Well, that was the point. Question without notice. But yeah, like, I think it's really hard to be both a creative person and a business person. I think you guys are doing it really well. I would certainly advocate for the BWRM brand if there's people out there listening that want to do something, because I think it just basically comes down to the no dickhead model, and you're not a dickhead and you're doing really good things, and all your team and stuff just love the business from what I can see, and what they talk about you behind your back, which is a good thing. So, mate, thanks so much for coming on the show. I know it's not really your jam, and I think it just goes back to, like, you don't have favourites with you know, real estate agents and businesses and stuff, but I just think you got a great story, and thanks heaps for coming on and sharing it. And we didn't have got heaps more we could have spoke about, but thanks so much for coming on. You're a bloody star.
Nah, thanks, mate. I appreciate your
legend
having me here.
Thanks. Bye.